Now that the entire first season of Star Wars Andor is officially out on Disney Plus, time now for my review of Andor. And yes, all 12 episodes are now available for you to watch and binge via Disney Plus. And this was an amazing show. I absolutely loved watching Andor from start to finish, and I cannot praise it enough. But let's go ahead and get into it. Andor was created by Tony Gilroy, and his brother Dan Gilroy was one of the writers, and another brother, John Gilroy, is one of the editors, so they kept it in the family when it came to the Gilroys and Andor. The composer was Nicholas Bertel. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Brilliant job composing Andor from start to finish. Some of the cast members include Diego Luna returning as Andor from Rogue One, Giovanna O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. Now, she did play Mon Mothma several times already in a deleted scene from Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. She also voiced Mon Mothma in Rebels, and she also played Mon Mothma in Rogue One, and it's very fitting that they brought her back to play Mon Mothma once again in Andor. There's also some other great acting and actresses involved in the show, including Stellan Skarsgård, the great Andy Serkis, Forrest Whitaker, and so many other great actors, actresses who played main roles, supporting, recurring characters throughout all 12 episodes of Andor, and they all did a brilliant job. The setting of Andor is 5 years before Rogue One, as well as Episode 4, A New Hope. And I'm going to keep this part mostly spoiler-free. I may talk a little spoilers afterwards. The one thing I really love about Andor is this show is a lot grittier, darker, and the Empire actually comes across as scary, intimidating. The writing, the production values, the sets, the special effects, the action scenes, character development arcs, the overall acting, and the score is all top-notch on this show. Yes, it is a slow burn. It's not going to be for everybody. Some people may prefer Mandalorian over Andor. I think they're both great Star Wars shows, but they're each a little different, but they all both exist in the same Star Wars galaxy, whereas Andor exists prior to Rogue One. In Episode 4, you have Mandalorian after Return of the Jedi. So they're on opposite ends of the original trilogy. But yes, it is a slow burn, and it's similar to Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul in that regard. But the build-up and the story arcs across Season 1 absolutely pay off. I love how they flesh out two main characters that we come to know already, such as Andor from Rogue One, and especially Mon Mothma's character, who was first introduced in Return of the Jedi, as well as introducing us to new, interesting characters into the Star Wars galaxy. The beginnings of the rebellion, the struggle against the powerful, tyrannical, almost unstoppable galactic empire. It's great to see it from this point of view and how overwhelming such a cause is, especially many years after the events of Episode 3, where the Emperor has all but taken control over the galaxy, and how daunting of a task it is to even sow the seeds of rebellion with any hope of eventually taking down the Galactic Empire as well as the Emperor. Most of us know that it eventually falls, but Andor does a great service to the Galactic Empire, showing you how powerful they are and how scary and how dangerous it is to oppose the Galactic Empire throughout the events of this era between Episodes 3 and 4. And I'm going to be honest, like so many others, the idea of a prequel series to Rogue One didn't exactly thrill me when it was first announced a few years ago, but I'm glad I gave Andor a chance, and I would encourage any fellow Star Wars fan to do the same, especially now that you can binge through all 12 episodes of the first season of Andor. Especially when you compare it to other Disney Plus Star Wars shows. Boba Fett was very underwhelming in my opinion. I was disappointed by the Obi-Wan miniseries. Andor, on the other hand, is a much-needed breath of fresh air for the Star Wars franchise that's been struggling ever since the disaster known as the sequel trilogy. There have been some successes, like Mandalorian, for example, and wrapping up the Clone Wars as well as the Bad Batch. But Andor is not only an amazing Star Wars show, it is a great show in its own right. And that's a big credit to the leadership of Tony Gilroy, his brothers, other writers, directors, the entire cast, and the production team. Everyone involved in Andor did a stellar job, and I cannot recommend Andor enough. This show was great to watch from start to finish. And yeah, like I mentioned, a bit of a slow burn, but a lot of stories, a lot of character development happens. And when it comes to Andor, you won't find surviving Jedi, Inquisitors, lightsaber fighting, or the Force being used. However, I feel like the Force is very strong with Andor. And it sucks that we're going to have to wait another 2 years for the second and unfortunately final season of Andor, which will wrap up prior to the events of Rogue One. But I'd rather have a limited series like Andor that gives us 2 quality, like 24 episodes altogether when it's all said and done, than a show that's gone on a little too long. I'm looking at you, Walking Dead. Or a miniseries that only had half the episodes, yet the quality in almost every way was less than Andor. I'm gazing over at you, Obi-Wan miniseries, with a few exceptions in those 6 episodes. By the way, I did do a review of all 6 episodes of Obi-Wan, as well as Boba Fett, both seasons of Mandalorian so far, and all 9 episodes of the Star Wars Skywalker saga over on my Star Wars playlist, FYI. Now, I do want to talk some spoilers. I'm not going to stay here all day talking spoilers, but I would love your honest opinion about Andor, those of you that have watched it start to finish. What did you think about it? Spoiler free, of course. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you somewhere in the middle? Feel free and let us know below in the comments section. Now let's talk about some spoilers. I think they did a great job fleshing out Andor's character, his backstory, because during the events of Rogue One, we barely get any time with Andor. The only thing we know about him is that he's not your typical, like, completely good rebel. He's willing to kill people that he thinks are going to be handed over to the Empire for the greater good, and he doesn't really come across as likable. And we don't really get enough time with Andor, so that's not really the actor's fault of the characters. But with the first season of Andor, we definitely get plenty of time with Andor, and his character gets fleshed out rather well. And I think by the end of the first season, you definitely grow to appreciate and understand Andor's character. Another pleasant surprise was how much time we got with Mon Mothma, who is obviously a very important character in the Rebellion. As I mentioned already, first seen in Return of the Jedi briefly. So I'm glad we get more time with Mon Mothma. We see her struggles to help fund the Rebellion from behind the scenes while she's still an Imperial senator. At the same time, she is actually a mother and a wife. And we see her struggle to protect her daughter and how they don't exactly have the best relationship, because her mother is a senator and she's constantly busy with her work, with her charities. But unbeknownst to her, her mom is also involved with the early days of the rebellion. We also get a little time with Saul Guerrero, who's already established from the events of Clone Wars, Rebels, as well as Rogue One, reprised once again by Forrest Whitaker. So we see a little time with Saul Guerrero before he's become completely crazy and insane by the events of Rogue One. You see bits and pieces of this throughout Rebels, I think, as well as in this show. And we'll probably see more of Forrest Whitaker as Saul Guerrero in Season 2, hopefully. A new character that they introduced, well, one of many new characters that I thought was brilliant, Luthen. And he is going to be a vital part of the early days of the Rebellion. He comes across as this humble shop owner of this art gallery. It's a front. He's running behind the scenes. The different cells are trying to organize them. You have partisans like under Saul Guerrero. You have former separatists. You have other factions not exactly working so well together, but they do have a common interest. They all hate the tyrannical galactic empire, and they want to see it overthrown. But the problem is, in the early days of the rebellion, they're not exactly working together. They're different factions, different cells. But Luthen obviously sees a grander plan of one day uniting the factions together against the Galactic Empire. And he's very mysterious. We still know very little about his backstory. Hopefully they'll get fleshed out more in season 2. But he's an overall badass and not afraid of getting his hands extremely dirty and sacrificing everything if need be in order to ultimately bring down the Galactic Empire. And he has some brilliant moments throughout the first season of Andor. And I cannot praise this character enough. He is willing to do some pretty horrible, nasty things in order to stop the Empire, because he knows that in order to stop them, you have to sometimes get just as bad, if not worse, than some of the things the Empire does. Luthen's fully aware of the fact that every time he sends out people to fight for the rebellion, that a lot of them are not going to come back, and that every successful mission is only going to tighten the Empire's grip further upon planets, star systems, and the galaxy as a whole, which means the Empire is going to continue to get worse and worse. But that's part of his plan. He knows that if the Empire continues to tighten their grip, then more people are going to rebel and speak out against the Empire and fight the Empire until ultimately there will be a full-fledged rebellion against the Empire itself. A lot of innocent people are going to be caught in the middle and die. But at the end of the day, he knows that it will lead eventually to the end of the Empire and the rebellion succeeding, though he accepts that he will never be able to enjoy that sunlight, that dawn, that ultimately this rebellion that he is spearheading will probably cost him everything, and most likely his life as well before it's all said and done. The character Deidre, which is an ISB officer, was phenomenal, and I love all the scenes with the ISB. They're so intimidating and scary how they wear their lovely white uniforms and they're plotting on behalf of the Emperor, and they're trying to be the eyes and ears and the quote-unquote medicine to put down any potential like uprisings or rebellions. I always find those scenes with Deidre and the ISB quite riveting, showing the inner workings, the strategy, the brutality of the ISB against anyone who would dare speak out or challenge the Empire. Another great character in Deidre, but you see her point of view from the side of the Empire. And that's one thing I really like, because there's characters on the side of the rebellion, and then there's a few characters that are allied with the Empire. And Andy Serkis, I gotta praise Andy Serkis. What a phenomenal actor. I've always enjoyed his work, from playing Gollum in Lord of the Rings, as well as Caesar in the Planet of the Apes films a few years ago. I think they're making a new one. I don't know if Andy Serkis will be involved, but he was great as Caesar in those 3 films. And he's overall a very underrated actor. And I'm so glad that we actually get to see some top-notch performance by Andy Serkis in the prison arc. And I really hope that we get to see his character Kino return. I doubt it, but I would love to see Kino in season 2 of Andor, because Andy Serkis is an amazing actor. And I was glad to see him cast as Alfred in the Batman, because a lot of times he's cast as villainous characters or CGI characters. In fact, he also played Snoke in episodes 7 and 8. No, I don't buy into the Kino being Snoke theory. I think that's a bunch of hogwash. I just think that Tony Gilroy brought back Andy Serkis to play this character because Andy Serkis is a phenomenal actor, and he deserved to be in this show, just like everybody else. All the other actors and actresses, whether they had big roles, supporting roles, or even small roles, they all were phenomenal. And the scenes that they had with Andy Serkis, he all but stole the show throughout the prison arc. And I hope that this makes people realize what I've already known for years, that Andy Serkis is a phenomenal actor. He was great playing Gollum and Smeagol throughout Lord of the Rings, and I loved him as Caesar in all the Planet of the Apes films. And I would say he was quite intimidating as Snoke. It's unfortunately that the writing for Snoke was terrible, and that is not Andy Serkis' fault. That was miscommunication and no clear vision for the sequel trilogy from JJ to Rian Johnson when it came to The Last Jedi. And in a way, I don't entirely blame Rian Johnson either, even though Last Jedi did do some questionable things. I think the problem at the end of the day was the fact that there was no clear vision start to finish for episodes 7, 8, and 9 for the sequel trilogies. All in all, I blame Kathleen Kennedy for that L. But at the same time, I guess I have to give her some credit for most likely staying the hell out of the way of Tony Gilroy when it came to the production of Andor. I don't know if she meddled in any form or fashion. Maybe she just sat back and like, hey, it looks like you're doing a good job. I'm going to leave you alone because that's the best thing I can do and let you make this amazing TV show. Hopefully we'll see more aliens in season 2. That was one of the complaints about the first season of Andor. There just wasn't as many alien characters as there should have been. And despite the fact I enjoyed the season finale, I was surprised that the death toll for main supporting characters was lower than I was thinking. I thought that a few more characters would end up dying before the end of the first season. Now, I'm sure a lot of them will die throughout the events of season 2 leading up to Rogue One. But oh no, I thought the first season of Andor was amazing. It kept getting better of every single episode and arc, from Andor's backstory in the first 3 episodes, as well as the heists on Aldhani, the prison arc, and the final 2 episodes, which end up wrapping up on Ferrix with the funeral of Andor's mom. You know, another good actress who played Maeve, his mom. I mean, she was great, especially that final scene where you have that hologram message of her after she's passed away, basically encouraging people to rise up against the Empire. And one thing that I'm very pleasantly surprised by is the fact that even at first, this show may have not been trending as we were hoping for in the early days of Andor a few months ago. That was because we had some other big shows out there. We had Rings of Power, we had House of the Dragon, we also had She-Hulk, and once those shows wrapped up, then I think a lot of people started gravitating towards Andor, and there's been a lot of word of mouth out there on social media, a lot of people praising it on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit. So you saw a natural growth of a fan base revolved around Andor throughout the first season. And I think that now that all 12 episodes are on Disney Plus, more people throughout the holiday season, it's Thanksgiving weekend coming up in America, and you got Christmas, you got Kwanzaa, you got Hanukkah coming up, or whatever you celebrate. There's going to be times where people are going to sit around wanting something to binge watch, and I think this is a great time for people to get on Disney Plus for like a month, or like the 7-day free trial, and binge Andor, all 12 episodes, especially if you're a Star Wars fan and you've been wanting something that feels a bit more adultish and a breath of fresh air, not like the typical copy pasta that we've unfortunately seen in previous Disney Star Wars content. Andor might be right up your alley. Maybe they should have gone with a different name, but Andor is the name of the show, and that's the name, for better or worse. But there's more to the show than simply the name of the show. It's a great show. It does involve Andor, and I think do a great job of Andor, but it also involves Mon Mothma, Luthen, and a few other characters that we're introduced to throughout the first season of Andor. And I can't wait to see where the show ends up in the second season. But those are 2 other cons. A, we have to wait 2 more years. B, it's the last season. We're not going to get a 3rd season, or 4th season, or 5th season of Andor. After the 2nd season, it's over because it's a limited series. But I prefer a story like this that gives you a beginning, a middle, and an end. And Andor is basically the beginning, and season 2 will be the middle, and the end will be Rogue One, which ties into the original trilogy. I feel like by the time the 2nd season of Andor comes out in 2024, unfortunately, I mean, we will have season 3 of Mandalorian, the next season of Bad Batch, and I think Ahsoka will be out prior to Andor. So there's definitely other Star Wars content that hopefully will turn out to be good for us to look forward to. But by the time I think the 2nd and final season of Andor drops, I think a lot of people are going to be really, really excited about it because of the natural build up, the word of mouth across the internet regarding just how good this show is. And hopefully, if I'm still around in 2 years from now and still making content on my channels, I will definitely do a season 2 review of Andor. Your thoughts, views, and opinions, as always, welcome below in the comment section, and may the Force be with you.